Family-centered, Christian-based, grown in the heart of the Midwest. Talking to people from all walks of life.
The world needs more encouraging stuff, honest conversation. I always put my biblical spin on everything because that's my foundation. My name's Bubba. What is up?
What is up, everybody? Here we go. Welcome to episode 64 of the best small town, real life, no phony social media filter podcast on the market. This episode, I'm going to get some things off my chest a little bit. It's been enough time. The Charlie Kirk assassination and how it impacted me. We're going to get to that on this episode. I kind of been holding back, dealing with things, processing things, really going through the emotions of the whole thing of what happened, seeing that happen, and how much I related to Charlie Kirk and things like that, but just letting it process in real life instead of just living it out on social media. But now it's time for me to go ahead and get my feelings out there, let you guys know how it impacted me. Maybe I can encourage you in some way by how I was feeling and still am feeling, I guess. And then we're also going to look at the stark contrast in reactions to his tragic murder. Everyone's seen it, you know. So there's people out there that are mourning and grieving. There are people who are inspired. It looks like there's Christian revival. People are giving Jesus a look like never before. And then there's people who are degrading his memorials and saying all kinds of terrible things about him online and losing their jobs over it. And just, man, it just seemed we have lost our ability to be a civilized country in the most important of moments like this. We're going to get into all that, but to me, it's an obvious battle between light and darkness, and that's kind of going to be the theme of this whole episode. So, but we're also going to get into the loss of other upstanding, godly men who have influenced me over the years, like Dr. James Dobson, Pastor John MacArthur, Vodi Bakum. Those are all guys that really good, godly men that I've been listening to, or some, you know, from day one of being a Christian, you know, back in 2001. I remember listening to Focus on the Family radio or Family Talk. I can't remember what he called it, but Dr. Dobson had a radio program on 101.9 in the afternoons when I was doing maintenance at a hotel downtown Waterloo. It was the Holiday Inn, then it was the Ramada down there on 4th Street, and I would just turn that on as I was working. And that building had 228 rooms, and they were all like 25 years old. The hotel was 25 years old. So we were redoing all the tile in the bathroom. So I would just turn on a radio in a bathroom and just go to town. So I got to listen to a lot of Dr. Dobson. We're going to really pay those guys some respect and how they've impacted me. We're also going to talk about like just how dangerous it is to continue to use these terms like fascist, Nazi, Hitler. You know, it started as innocent as just deplorables, you know, stuff like that. That was almost kind of funny, you know, but we got to stop using that kind of language, no matter what you believe, because I really think, some people don't even know what fascist means. You know, people calling Charlie Kirk a fascist. A fascist, by definition, will not give his opponents a microphone to speak. He won't. And Charlie always let those who disagreed with him come up to the microphone first. So some people just don't even know what it means, okay? But we've got to stop doing that. There is not another Hitler. We've got to stop this stuff. We're also going to get into a documentary that inspired me and encouraged me recently to continue my mission of making sure none of my family or my kids are lost to any of these false ideologies that are out there, this deceptive teaching. You know, I'm talking about stuff like the whole gender thing, the critical race theory that's causing all kinds of division. No, I'm going to fight for my kids tooth and nail that they don't succumb to that kind of stuff. And there was a documentary released by Focus on the Family recently. It's on YouTube for free called Truth Rising. And it really sums up what kind of started me really getting after this stuff and trying to protect my kids from it. So you can go check that out right now on YouTube for free, Truth Rising, after this episode, of course. So if you're new to the podcast, you didn't stumble here by mistake. There's a reason you're here. Okay, I don't care how you got here. I promise you, you're in the right place. It's not an accident. I'm glad to have you here. I want this one chance to win you over and earn your support. Okay, we're trying to create something good here, something that is both entertaining but also encouraging at the same time. And not everybody's in that market. Most people are just trying to entertain. I'm not. I'm trying to entertain and encourage, trying to build people up, share truth, have honest conversation with people. But sometimes it's just by myself. So if you like what you hear today, please like, follow, subscribe wherever you're listening or watching. You know the drill. Give us that 5-star rating on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Subscribe on YouTube. Maybe even leave a nice comment there on our YouTube channel. That really helps beat the algorithm. So if you want some bonus content, follow our social media. There go the dogs. Yeah, you can tell it's a homegrown podcast right here, still in the basement. I don't know, does it really look like a studio? Got my Dan Patrick calendar on the wall over there. Wapsie youth football jersey, 1980 Olympic hockey jersey, a podcast t-shirt, which we have them for sale. If you want one, hit me up. And as the dogs are still barking, what else do we got over there? Bo Jackson jersey in the backdrop, and then a nice little painting autographed from TonyThomasArt.com. That's also signed by Phil and Kay Robertson. Usually when the dogs start barking, my kids or somebody knows, hey, get them quiet, Dad's recording. But there we go. So anyway, like I was saying, if you want bonus content, you want to get on some merch giveaways, you want some episode teaser reels, stuff like that, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. I honestly don't think you'll be disappointed by anything we've put out there. Maybe the early stuff with no video. That was a little hard to watch on YouTube, but hey, most people listen to podcasts. So go back to the beginning. We're on episode 64. Go back to the beginning. Consume as much of it as you want. I'm sure you'll enjoy it all. But let's get this episode started right now. How did the Charlie Kirk assassination impact me? Man, let me tell you. I knew who he was, for, I don't know, the last 10 years probably, I guess, or somewhere in there. But I just thought he was another, political guy. It was all about politics, going after young people. I understood that's kind of where he was going. He was going to college campuses and stuff. But I didn't start following him until a couple of years ago when we started the podcast, and I realized we got to have social media for the podcast. Then I start seeing these things in my feed, so I really got to know him, and I realized he was much more than just some young person interested in politics. He was a passionate Christian who was extremely well-read on a variety of topics like history, government, economics, the Bible. I mean, the guy knew his facts.
His rhetoric and beliefs were ignorant, uneducated.
After high school, he built Turning Point from the ground up with nothing, got donors to help support that. He would make it his mission to go to college campuses and not to insult young people or make them look bad, but just offer a different worldview, a worldview that he thought was better by having conversation and debate of idea. And this is really it's not the same thing, but it's a similar goal that I have with this podcast. Show people through conversations how a good relationship with Jesus is and how the biblical worldview will improve our lives dramatically. I love how Charlie started with no crowds. It was just a table and a chair, a little portable microphone or whatever. And he had nothing but uncertain possibilities in front of him in his future. As people came and went early on, there was a majority of people that disagreed with him, and he was having to try and win them over by getting them to engage in conversation and debate ideas and do some critical thinking. But over the years, recently, in the last, I don't know however many years it's been, but since I've been seeing him, the crowds began to form, and they were filled with people who, a majority of them supported him, and then there were some that just vehemently disagreed with his views. And like I said in the opening, I loved how he let them come first. He let them skip the line. He didn't want to hear from the people that agreed with him first. He wanted to hear from the people that had a different worldview than him and had different opinions. And he didn't just ridicule them and insult them and be sarcastic. There was times I saw him get worked up, but it's few and far between. He really did. He wanted to hear your opinion. He wanted to respond with facts, debate of ideas, hopefully inspire some critical thinking in the minds of young people. I love how he presented the biblical example of how to live life, and he just dared people to disprove the benefit of doing so. Everything from relationships to dating to marriage to the value of life, just a Western civilization as a whole. Like anytime the Christian moral foundation is in place in someone's life or in a culture, it can improve dramatically. And he was trying to prove that to people and encourage them to give that a look if they hadn't already. So not too much different than what I'm trying to do here with this podcast. So his assassination, it shook me for days. For days. I was a little quiet around the house. I mean, I still remember it popping up on my phone while I was at work, and I said something to the guy in the office next to me, and you don't have any of the details right away. You don't know if he's dead. You just, okay, he got shot. Maybe it's not as serious as we hope, and yeah, it was, but I didn't comment or repost much on social media or through the podcast. I haven't really spoke about it too much. I wanted to wait till I had time to actually go through the process, get my thoughts together, grieve at first a little bit, understand what happened. That way, when it was time for me to go ahead and speak, and I told the young high school football team this year when I spoke to them, I said, hey, when you speak, have something to say of importance, of value. The Bible says be slow to speak, quick to listen. So I really wanted since it affected me so much, I wanted to just go ahead and let my feelings run their course and not pretend like this wasn't real life. Now I can get to the point where I can start talking about my thoughts and how it impacted me and stuff like that. But I didn't want to just give a quick reaction. So I needed time to process the whole tragedy and what I was seeing in the aftermath. So after a day or so, I called the whole family into the living room, and I told them that I was searching for an answer as to how someone could get so far down a certain way of thinking that they thought they needed to kill somebody else for his views. That was really bothering me. Like, the kid that did this is a real person, and he thought he was in the right. He thought it was something that needed to be done. He thought Charlie was so bad that this is what needed to be done. How can our minds get that dark? So, of course, Scripture starts coming to my mind, and that's where we should go for answers. So, prove me wrong that this stuff doesn't make sense right here, Ephesians 6:12. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. There's evil in the world today. You can't deny it. There is. Bad things happen. Sometimes it's just, by chance. Sometimes it's consequences of living in a fallen world, but sometimes it's evil. It really is. Think about 1 Peter 5:8. Be alert and of sober mind. The enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion seeking someone to devour. So you put those two verses together, if we understand there's a spiritual battle going on, and Satan and the demonic forces that do have some power, it's limited, but they do have power here on earth. They don't have ultimate power. We know who has that. They're always looking for opportunities. They're always looking for people at their weakest moments. They're always looking for ways. Satan's called the great deceiver. He's looking for ways to infiltrate the mind and the heart and put as much distance between human beings and God, their creator, as possible. And I can see that's how you get to this point where someone can get so far down a dark road that this is what they decide to do. John 1:5 says, the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. And that's where I want to sit for a minute right there. Right there. When we shine light into darkness, you walk into a room and you flip a light switch, the darkness there's no way the darkness can stay. Okay? Darkness is simply the absence of light. Okay? So I asked my kids, I said, when you think about it like that, how much light are you putting into your lives on a daily basis? And I mean myself too, as well, and my wife. When we aren't putting light into our life, and I'm talking about the truth of the Word of God. I'm talking about time spent growing their relationship with Jesus, whether it's prayer and devotions and study and going to church and worship and serving Him. That's all light. That's all good and true. The less of that we're putting into our life and consuming, the more open that is for darkness. It really is. And I know, oh, that sounds just too dramatic. I'm not doing anything dark or evil or anything like that. Darkness will grow in the absence of light, I'm telling you. Satan wants nothing more than for millions of people who are just trying to live good lives apart from God. He wants them going to their death thinking, I don't need God, but I'm not bad either. I don't have any darkness in me. I'm not evil. Guess what? Apart from Jesus, we are not going to spend eternity in heaven with Him. So that's kind of what Satan wants. So I was asking my kids, I said, that's it. If the more light there is in you, the more you're focusing on Jesus and growing in your relationship with Him and a knowledge of His Word, man, it's pretty hard for darkness to get a foothold. But the less you do that, we're opening ourselves up for those kinds of situations. It's not good. We don't want that darkness creeping in. We definitely don't want it to get to the point where we're thinking and contemplating and acting on these evil desires that can be put in our minds. Then I noticed the stark contrast in reaction to Charlie's murder. A lot of people were in shock and devastated, and then others felt inspired to do better and seek truth and go to church. We all saw the post. People really were stirred up over this, even if they had never been before. They kind of saw, if this sort of thinking, his views are under attack, maybe there's something there. Maybe it's worth something. Maybe it's worth dying for. Because you remember what Charlie said. He said, when I die, I want to be remembered for having courage for my faith.
I want to be remembered for courage for my faith. That would be the most important thing. The most important thing is my faith.
That he did. That he did, because he did get death threats, and he knew. And another guy followed, Dr. Frank Turek. He was the guy off to Charlie, like behind him and to the right, and he tipped his cap and he was running his phone. Dr. Frank Turek wrote the book, I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist, and really lays out all the evidence of, just how many miracles it takes to not believe in the existence of God as a creator. And people were starting to say, oh, he was signaling and all that kind of stuff. No, that's not it. But Dr. Frank Turek said he was with him that day, and he told him, I don't like the setup of all the buildings. It's a little, it's just too hard to guarantee security. And Charlie kind of brushed it off, he said. So, Charlie had courage. He just went out there and did it and didn't let, if anything was going to happen, it was going to happen. And Charlie knew where he was going. So, but then we saw others that were celebrating. Really, at first, I saw them mocking. And then I ended up seeing, the more videos you see, you start to see more and more content of the same stuff. So, yeah, I started seeing a little bit of just insensitivity, and then a little bit of mocking, and then celebrating, and then defacing of memorials, and then people starting to get doxxed and lose their jobs for saying these vile things. And it became painfully clear to me that we, as human beings, just don't value and respect all human life anymore. Not on the level that we should. I know there's a lot of us that do, but there's too many of us that don't. When we demonize and vilify certain people unnecessarily, that's what can lead to this kind of lack of respect for human life. Like I said earlier, using the term fascist, Nazi, Hitler, deplorable, it's got to stop. It's got to stop. But I'll be honest with you, I fear that it won't. I really do. I don't think it will. I don't think it'll stop. So I go back to the obvious spiritual battle, and how much light and darkness are we actually pouring into our lives? The theme verse for the whole podcast, Colossians 3:2. Focus on the things above, not on things on the earth. This is only temporary. If our moral foundation is set by God, man, we won't be doing stuff like this. Our hearts will be filled with an attitude of just thankfulness, gratefulness, love for our neighbor, trying to please God, live life his way, I mean, letting him determine right and wrong, what's true and false, rather than us just every one of us getting to choose. Focus on things above. I really think that's the only way to go forward. I do take heart knowing that seeing some of this revival coming about, I've heard people say that, we need revival in this country again, revival in this country, a large wave of people coming back to God. Well, when you study the Bible, the only time that happens is after like brokenness. It's after some pretty dark times. That's when Israel would always cry out to God, and they would come back to him when he would deliver them. But they would have to suffer the consequences for a while before they would get to that point. So when people said they want revival, and I say, well, everyone wants revival, but no one wants to go through the brokenness that comes beforehand that'll bring people to their knees and cry out to God. Well, this could be one of those events. I honestly think people got a glimpse of evil, and it's making them cry out to God and search for God and seek truth. So that kind of gives me hope for sure, because I love seeing that. That's always good. But I'm always looking for that anyway, and I find it in different areas all the time, whether it's the Ohio State football team or, whatever I see going on. I'm always looking for young Christians or the Christian on the right, Christianity spreading. It's very positive. So, but we had some losses of other upstanding godly men that influenced me, like I said earlier, Dr. James Dobson, A Focus on the Family, John MacArthur, Vodi Bakum. These guys are both pastors. John MacArthur was a pastor in California, so he was always up for a good fight. And I've read some of his stuff and heard some of his teachings and preaching over the years, and it was all good. But one thing I remember him the most for was his boldness during the COVID lockdowns. I hate going back to this time. It was crazy. I get it. But it was really bad in California. And when you got a church in California, I mean, you are the shepherd of that flock. You are the leader. How he led was very impressive. It sticks out in my mind. There were certain places that were labeled essential, certain businesses, certain jobs, whatever, and churches weren't on that list. So I remember once, I think I even quoted this in a sermon. He said, we're meeting at church today, and if they say it's illegal, we'll just call it a protest, because apparently those gatherings are allowed. And that is what we were seeing. There was a lot of riots and protests in the streets, hundreds and thousands gathered, and it was a crazy time with those BLM riots and things like that. And he said, if the law isn't going to break those up, the law sure isn't going to come into a church, a house of worship, and tell us we can't worship for a couple hours on Sunday. As the guy from Dodgeball would say, bold move, Cotton, bold move. That was impressive. That stuck with me. So Vodi Bakum, he had some health issues a little while back, and then I thought he was really healthy, and I guess he had an emergency surgery the other day and didn't make it. He was in his, I want to say, early 50s, mid-50s at the latest probably. Married, kids, all that good stuff. He was a former college football player at Rice and New Mexico State before transferring to Houston Baptist University to get ready for ministry. And I've read some of his books. He was one of the first ones to really call out critical race theory with his book, Fault Lines. And this guy was awesome. And the book that I use, in addition to the Bible, when I do like pre-marriage counseling or when I just talk about dating and relationships with people, I use one of his books called What He Must Be. And he just kind of lays out the biblical example for relationships, dating, marriage, into that, and how our culture, what's normal in our culture is actually what's producing all the pain, heartache, sexually transmitted diseases, teen pregnancy, divorce, broken homes, all. If we would try it God's way, which is very different, but it's so much more fulfilling because it's the way God designed it to be done, like all those numbers go down. And I was like, man, this guy's making sense. It really does. And I didn't do anything right, but reading the way he put it in his book, it makes sense. Let's do it. Let's do it God's way. And that's what I've trained my kids to do anyway. So Vodi was a lot like Pastor Brooks. We just had Pastor Brooks on. He's in the middle of, not in the middle, but he just started walking across America to finish raising the funds for his center there in Chicago and bring revival back to the country. He's a lot like him. He's a strong voice for biblical truth and personal accountability at the same time. So that did not make Vody the most popular guy in the black community, but he did not care. He didn't care one bit. His loyalty was to God and God alone, and he wasn't going to compromise for nothing. I believe he's been on CNN one time, and they never asked him back. Because, like Pastor Brooks said, he didn't fit their narrative. A black Christian guy who is speaking conservative family values of accountability, and he said, no, that's it. That's not who they want to hear from, and that's just not right. But that was Vody Bakum. So in less than 1 year, that means we've lost godly men like Phil Robertson, John MacArthur, Vody Bakum, James Dobson, and Charlie Kirk recently. They all went home to be with the Lord. I mean, you talk about a lineup in heaven right now within the last year. That is an all-star lineup right there. That is, man, that's better than, the old Yankees, Murderers Row. That's impressive. I can't wait to see who rises in their absence to kind of fill those shoes or to pick up the torch and carry it forward. I will say this for certain, though. Every one of those guys would gladly see not one person step up and be like the big public figure to fill their shoes and take a place of prominence in the culture, fighting the culture war raging in our country, if it meant that all of us regular, average moms and dads, husbands and wives, who will never be heard of outside of our hometowns, if we would step up and lead our families like Christ commanded us to. I'm sure they would much rather have millions of those people than anyone step up to be the face of Christianity, kind of like they were. So my question is, we all got to ask ourselves, are we up for it? Because we were definitely made for it. We just got to be willing to do it. Something to think about. Last thing I wanted to share on this episode is what inspired me to actually get serious about being the spiritual leader of my home. I know that sounds a little weird. Some of my listeners, they haven't heard that kind of talk before, spiritual leader, stuff like that. Well, somebody's got to do it, right? If somebody's going to lead and influence your wife and kids, or your husband, your family, okay, might as well be you. Dads, you have a specific responsibility in this too. So I had a pastor teach me years ago that biblically it was my responsibility to be the spiritual leader of my house. And when I noticed culture and morality beginning to go down a dangerous road, and all truth becoming relative, my truth, your truth, that sort of thing, I realized that could be the end of everything stable in our country and would actually tear down the foundation of our society. I could see that right away. If we start allowing people to have their own truth, man, that is, nothing will stand. Nothing will stand. Everything will crumble. That's a horrific place to be, and I thought, I don't want to go there. I don't want to live in a place like that. I don't want my country to become a place like that. So I looked at my young kids, one of which wasn't even born yet, Grace. She wasn't even there. And I made a commitment. I said, man, if this is what God created me to do, He gave me this family, I'm supposed to protect them and lead them, well, I'm not going to let them down. No way. I heard it said once, I can't remember if I saw it on social media. It may be one of the good things that has come out of social media. I can't remember. But I heard it said that you can't take anything with you to heaven. That is a fact. You don't take anything with you. But if there's one thing that comes close to you being able to take with you, it's your kids. So I'll fight with everything I got for my kids not to be consumed by the darkness, by the deception, by the confusion and lies and all that stuff that's out there in culture. No, I'm going to give them truth. I'm going to show them Jesus, who loved them, died for them, rose again, wants nothing but the best for them. But he's honest. He says, following him, it is a narrow road. Okay? The path is wide that leads to destruction, and there's many who are on it, but the road is narrow that leads to eternal life, and there's few who find it. So how do we do that? How do we do that? You might be saying, okay, yeah, I want to do that. I see exactly what's going on out in the world today, but I'm not equipped. I didn't grow up in the church. I don't have any tools. What do I do? All that's, I didn't grow up in the church. I didn't step foot into a church till I was 20, and most of the people there were probably shocked. I heard it said today that God doesn't call the equipped to step up. He equips those that he calls. And he's called all of us moms and dads to lead our homes. Okay? So how do we do that? Get in the Word of God. Get in the Word. If you don't know where to start, if it's too intimidating, that's fine. I'll tell you where to go. Start in the book of John. Then go to Matthew, Mark, and Luke. Just read the 4 Gospels. It's all the story about Jesus told from 4 different points of view. Start there. Get to know Jesus. Then we'll take it from there, okay? Get right with Jesus. Get saved. Get baptized. Get to a Bible-believing, gospel-preaching church that is active. Serve. Do ministry with that church. Do life with the people in that church. Build relationships with those people. Consume as much godly content as you can. You know, I'm talking uplifting, truth-filled content as you can. You know, I don't hardly listen to music that often. I'm more listening to Christian talk radio or podcasts, things like that. But start with daily devotionals. If you say, okay, the Bible's just a little too much, and you'll try the book of John. Well, they make daily devotionals. We're talking 1 page a day, and it's just a couple of verses and then maybe some commentary that will help you understand what you're reading. You know, that's the good thing about a study Bible, too. Read the book of John in a study Bible, you get study notes. But a daily devotional, those can really start your day off the right way. Podcasts, Christian podcasts, Christian movies, Christian radio, magazines, books. You know, I got plenty of old sermons. I would not be opposed to sending you a link to watch any of those. I've covered just about everything I feel like I could cover with my limited expertise, but I got plenty of those things, okay? There's plenty of good content out there. So let me recommend these to my readers out there. Some of you guys are readers. Some of you are like me, and you probably struggle a little bit reading. Others, they're just not readers. They won't do it at all. So let me recommend some books like Gospeller by Willie Robertson, Kingdom Driven Life by Pastor Sunday Adelijah, and everyone remembers Chronicles of Narnia, right? C.S. Lewis. Well, he also wrote a couple books called Mere Christianity and the Screwtape Letters, okay? You want to read a good book, a good fiction book, read the Screwtape Letters. And then you'll start questioning yourself at the end, well, maybe this isn't fiction. Maybe this is really how Satan and the demons work. It's pretty good. So then movies. Maybe you're more like me and you're a movie person. You like movies. The Case for Christ, true story, one of my all-time favorite movies. The Blind, the life story of Phil and Kay Robertson. You don't think God is in the life-changing business? Watch The Blind. If you want a DVD copy, let me know. I'll probably be able to hook you up with one. And then one maybe you haven't heard about, but, you know, Halloween's right around the corner. Not a big fan of Halloween. Doesn't get my motor going. I think it's actually pretty dark, but a lot of people have fun with it. Nefarious. You want to watch a good psychological thriller. I know people are into that kind of stuff. It basically is this guy on death row, and he's about to go to the chair or injection or whatever he's going to get. And the lawyer has to come in and determine that, hey, he's actually not crazy, that they can put him to death. And it's just their exchange. The whole movie is their exchange. And it will shake you to your core how he brings out all that is evil in the world today and how it's all Satan's plan and how people are just falling for it left and right because they have no moral foundation. And what they're doing is bad and they think it's good and right. Nefarious is one heck of a movie. I highly recommend it. But it will encourage you. I promise you. You start consuming more of this stuff. It focuses your mind on God and on things that are right and true and good. And then that kind of starts coming out in you as well. So that's kind of how it works. Maybe you just need to be inspired, you know, motivated a little bit. Maybe you need to really see the threat that is coming at the younger generation today and the world they're growing up in. So I'll go back to what I said at the beginning. There's a new documentary out by Focus on the Family for free on YouTube right now called Truth Rising. It really lays out a few different avenues of deception and evil that are coming at our kids, coming for their minds. They're the prize. Guys, make no mistake. If there is a spiritual battle going on, the hearts and minds of the younger generation, that is the prize. That's really it. Are you going to stand by and let your kids just be sacrificed on the altar of this stuff? I'm not. No way. No way. If you do those things, if you consume those things, get in the Word of God, get into a good Bible-believing church, man, I promise you, you will get fired up for living for the Lord. serving the Lord, leading your family, and those are all good things. Those are life-changing good things. You know me. If you need help, I'm here for you. If you need anything, just reach out. I'll help any way I can. If you got my phone number, you can call me. You guys, if we're that close, you got my phone number, that's fine. If you want to email me, whatisuppodcast@gmail.com, I'll respond to your emails as well. Help any way I can. If you want to join me for church sometime, that's fine too. We go to church right there in good old First Baptist Church, Dunkerton, Iowa. That is a Bible-believing, teaching, serving the community kind of church. That's it. We don't just sit around and get old. We try and reach people with the gospel. So that's about it for this episode, but I kind of want to be honest that I had other plans for this week, and I realized I can't really do that episode without doing this one first, because this one's kind of a build-up to what's coming next week. Next week, we're going to get a little serious, too. When we talk about what is truth, people's answer to that question really comes down to their worldview. People are going to answer that question differently based on their worldview. And it just so happens that I preached a sermon a while back on that very topic. So next week, we're going to look at every aspect of what makes up a person's worldview. You know, why they believe what they believe, why they think the way they think, you know, why they trust and have the opinions they have. We're going to look at every aspect of what makes up a person's worldview and how to make sure that we have the right one. You don't want to miss it. Be sure to tune in next week for some life-changing biblical truth. I promise you, it's not like any other sermon you've heard. I didn't go to preach in school. I'm not your normal guy. So it's really, it's not just another pastor getting up there, but it's biblical truth, and you'll see it. It'll play out for sure when it comes to worldview. So if you need help with something or you want to talk deeper about anything you heard here today, reach out. I'll respond. I'll help any way I can. If you got questions, comments, you got ideas, email me, whatisuppodcast@gmail.com. Thank you guys so much for listening. Your support, each and every one of you, it means a lot to me and my family, the things you guys say, and when you reach out, and even just the simple likes on our posts or comments on our reels or underneath each episode when you say something positive, guys, like that means a lot to us. It doesn't just help us beat the algorithm to get more views. It lets us know you care and that you appreciate what we're trying to do. So, and that's all. We're just trying to help and encourage people. That's all we're trying to do. So, Lord willing, I'll talk to you on the next one.